Apple has made some pretty decent products over the last few years, with the iPhone 13 and 14 series, the Apple Silicon MacBooks, and other really good products and software to go with them. However, this video is dedicated to Apple's worst failures. From concerning to catastrophic, let's unpack these bad products that Apple has made. Starting us off, we have the U2 iPod. This was released in 2004. There were a few other U2 iPods after this, but this one was the only one that we're going to be ranking. It looked good, and effectively it was exactly the same as any other iPod. It failed to impress the general public and it only impressed fans. And so sales weren't too good on the U2 iPod. As well as it cost $50 more than the standard iPod. So no one really wanted it. It's not that much of a fail, but enough to be rated 2 out of 10 on the fail scale. But more recently, we have Apple's Magic Mouse, more specifically the Magic Mouse 2. Now, not everyone likes Apple's keyboards, mouses, and trackpads. Some people swear by them, but others would rather not even have them. But there's something we can all agree on. The Apple Magic Mouse 2 is really dumb, and here's why. When the first generation was discontinued and the second generation was introduced in 2015, instead of having AA batteries, they replaced it to be one rechargeable battery that would be powered by a lightning port. But here's the dumb thing. They went and put the lightning port on the bottom of the mouse, so you can't use your mouse while it's charging. So here's my Logitech mouse here, and obviously this one is powered by batteries, but on the Apple Magic Mouse, how it works is that you've got your charging point, your lightning point on the bottom here. So when you want to charge it, here you've got to have your thing plugged into here. Yeah. And this has been like this since 2015. 3 out of 10 fail. Come on, Apple, you can do better than this. But it's only 3 out of 10 because the battery lasts a long time, so it's only a minor inconvenience every once in a while. And staying on this mouse trend, we have Apple's hockey puck mouse from the 1990s. It was first released with the iMac G3 from 1998, and it was included with all desktop Macs for the next 2 years. The shape of the mouse was unergonomic, and it was hard for people to control and use. The round shape also meant that people had a difficult time orienting the mouse, so it was really hard for them to move around the mouse on the screen. If this was enough, the hockey puck's build quality was actually quite bad too. 3 out of 10 fail. There are worse ones after this. But here's another really bad fail. Back in 2019, a bug was discovered on FaceTime that basically meant your phone was a hot mic. The bug allowed iPhone users that when they called their friends or family on FaceTime, before they answered, you would be able to hear them. You would be able to hear audio on the other end before the recipient answered the call.
Jimmy, put your shoes on. If you don't put your shoes on right now, I'll take your food away for 10 days.
And do you know what makes this even funnier? The news broke on Data Privacy Day. It's just so bad. You've got a bug that breaks on Data Privacy Day, and you know how Apple's always like focused on privacy. So yeah, it's pretty dumb actually. 3 out of 10 fail. A software update was introduced afterwards in very close and quick succession. So it was fixed, but for the people who actually got to hear their friends, yeah, it's a bit sketchy to be honest.
That's it. No food, no water, no nothing. See ya.
And another Apple fail from the 1990s was eWorld. Apple tried to make a virtual world, similar to now what we call the metaverse, but obviously for the 90s, and it went down like a rat sandwich. I never even knew it existed before I was researching for this video. People could hang out, send emails, and just be productive in general. But it was expensive, and it never really took off because it was exclusive to macOS. So it wasn't a wide user base. It was pulled off the shelves in 1996. 3 out of 10 fail rating. The HomePod Mini has been flying off the shelves as a great value smart home speaker with Siri enabled, which is quite helpful for when you're having to ask it to play music, etc. But its big brother had a bit of a worse life. The 2018 Big Boy HomePod was good feature-wise, but the price was $350 US, which for the smart speaker at the time, which hadn't been fully developed, was very expensive. Consider that the HomePod Mini currently sells for $100 on Apple's website. Even after Apple reduced the price to $250, that's a $100 knockoff, they still didn't get to so many sales, and so eventually it got overshadowed with the HomePod Mini being introduced. 4 out of 10 fail rating. It lived a bit of a crap life. The 2010s was a time where a few different social media platforms launched. Instagram, TikTok, BeReal, etc. But unfortunately, a few of them didn't make it out of the 2010s, like Google+, which got discontinued in 2019, and one that you've probably not heard before, iTunes Ping. It was a social media service on iTunes. It was so that people could connect on iTunes, share their song listening tastes, etc. But you want to know why it flopped? It was because in the beta testing, there was a Facebook integration. So you could connect your iTunes Ping account with Facebook. So then you were able to connect with friends who were on Facebook and iTunes Ping at the same time. But in the final version, this Facebook integration got deleted. So you weren't able to connect with your friends on Facebook, meaning it was so hard to find friends to be with on iTunes Ping that the service didn't get enough users. It was hard to find friends on Ping, and that's why it shut down. And Tim Cook says the user has voted and they don't want to see us working on putting the resources into iTunes Ping. There was another service like this, Apple Music Connect, that was introduced for artists in 2015. Then again, it suffered the same fate and got axed in 2018 because of lack of users. So this whole music social media platforms from Apple, 4 out of 10 fail rating. They haven't had lots of luck with that. Have you ever heard of the Pippin? And no, I'm not talking about how FaceTime users were able to Pippin into other users' audio.
I'll take your food away for 10 days.
I'm talking about this games console that Apple tried to develop back in the 90s. Again, it's one of these Apple 90s flops. It was a cross between a computer and a games console, and they wanted to get users from the likes of Nintendo and Sony, but it honestly, no one really cared about it. Unfortunately, it flopped. The Pippin had a bad modem and no support from game developers, and you could say that's a combo for disaster. 4 out of 10 fail rating. Now, just before we get into our series of Mac fails, I'd like to tell you that my podcast, the Ethernet podcast, is going to be launching again soon. So I've just found out a way to load it onto Apple Podcasts, and it's also available on Anchor and Spotify. I want to try to cover tech news in the tech space. I'm hoping that's going to be kind of regular. So if you want to see that, you should go check it out. The links to those in the video description. Oh, also it's on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/@Ethernet, ETHANET, and I'll see you on there. Now we'll talk about the failed Macs. The Macintosh TV tried to combine the computer and the TV into one, except it did a pretty terrible job of it. You couldn't multitask and do multiple things at the same time, i.e. you couldn't watch a TV show and work on your computer at the same time, which for something trying to combine the computer and the TV into one didn't quite work out. 5 out of 10 fail. Modern day MacBooks are thinner than ever. You can see here I've got my M1 MacBook Air, which is so thin, and it's one of the thinnest laptops out there. But back in the 1980s, portable laptops consisted of a briefcase, and that's exactly what the Macintosh Portable was. This thick boy, and I emphasize 3 C's after that, was hard to carry, it couldn't manage simple tasks, and sometimes it wouldn't even turn on after being plugged in, which isn't a good thing to have. Talk about a good doorstop. 5 out of 10 fail. We're now coming back to 2015, and we're going to talk about the butterfly keyboard. Now, the butterfly keyboard was a new mechanism of keyboard that appeared with the 2015 MacBooks. The main difference was because they wanted to get the MacBook to be thinner and lighter than ever, they used a V shape on the mechanism. Basically, under the keyboard there was a V, and that's how it worked. Now, with the scissor mechanism, they had an X shape. Here's the problem with the butterfly keyboard. With the V mechanism, it was much easier for dust and dirt and all sorts of stuff to get under the keyboard. So sometimes the keyboard would jam and not even work. And so this was a major problem. And so Apple had to launch this program to replace all faulty keyboards. And it wasn't a good look for them. 6 out of 10 fail. Also, they went back to the scissor mechanism with the M1 MacBook Air, because they just couldn't be bothered with all the pain, so they went back to this X shape. The Apple Lisa, notoriously named after Steve Jobs' daughter, was a weird project. Firstly, it cost $10,000 US, which in today's money would be $30,500 US, which is blimmin' expensive for a computer that didn't even perform well. And as a final nail in the coffin, it was overshadowed by the Macintosh that was launched a year later. And there are plenty photos of Apple Lisas sitting in the dump because none of them really sold. 7 out of 10 fail. And if we go back nearly 3 years earlier, we have the Apple III. Riding off the success of the Apple II, the engineers were asked to make the design fanless, aka no fan at all. Now, here with my M1 MacBook, we have no fan in this, but obviously this was from 2020. But back in the 1980s, this was a hard thing to pull off, and they didn't pull it off well. There were major overheating issues because obviously the mechanics and everything wasn't quite developed enough to have a fanless design back in the 80s. So there were major overheating issues with it. It was a bad look for Apple because they had done so well with the Apple II, and then just a few years later it just crushed their whole brand image with the Apple III. 7 out of 10 fail rating. Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, actually said that, quote, "The reason why it failed was because it was designed by the marketing department rather than the engineering department." It's a good testament to how mechanics always has to come before design. The Newton message pad was Apple's first foray into the world of mobile devices, and you could ultimately argue that it was the stepping stone to the iPhones and the iPads that we have today. But it didn't do too good. The main star feature of it was how it could recognize your handwriting and convert it from your handwriting into text format. But this was ultimately the feature that killed the whole thing. It wasn't tested enough, and when the Newton got released, it hadn't even been fully developed. And so it was just a glitchy mess, and it's the whole reason it failed. 7 out of 10 fail rating. In 2014, Apple released the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus.
With a 4.7-inch display, iPhone 6 becomes taller and wider. We're also introducing iPhone 6 Plus with a larger 5.5-inch display.
Ultimately, their most popular iPhones to date. But there were some issues with the new design. Since the bigger screen on the iPhone 6 Plus, it was the first time that they had gone bigger than 4.7 inches to 5.5 inches of a screen size. But the design had some issues, and users reported that some phones were bending, especially when put under high pressure in your pocket. And your pocket is where your phone normally goes. So if your phone's just bending, that's not a good look. And so Apple had a major issue. Not only were their phones literally bending, but the media were reporting that the iPhone 6 was of bad quality and it wasn't good enough for a flagship phone. And so it was a scandal for them. 8 out of 10 fail. But this isn't the end of the scandals. We have AntennaGate, which happened 4 years earlier. Long story short, because of the new flatter design and the redesign of the antenna system, they had to put the antenna in a new place. But sometimes when users were taking phone calls or texting, there were a few issues with the connectivity. Sometimes bars would drop or calls would drop altogether if you were holding your phone in the left-hand corner. And for some people, this is unavoidable. At first, Apple just told people not to grip their phones in the bottom left-hand corner, which is actually kind of funny for Apple. But when the situation got serious enough, they had to issue free bumper cases to anyone that had an issue. Obviously, these cost money to make, so it was a bit of a miss for Apple having to issue them out for free. 8 out of 10 fail. Apple are perfectionists, and it was pretty bad that this happened. You know Apple Maps, right? Well, when it launched in 2012, you could say that it took you off the map. There was major issues with how the maps looked distorted and location issues. For example, Apple Maps put an Australian town in the middle of the desert. And so people would navigate to this town, which was in the middle of the outback, which had life-threatening temperatures. And if you went there without water, you could potentially die. Obviously, that was not really where the town was, but Apple Maps would put it like that. And in Ireland, there was a farm called Airfield, and Apple Maps had labeled it as an airfield, and so there was warnings that pilots may make emergency landings at this random farm. Places were being shown in the wrong locations, and the map literally just looked like an earthquake had happened. It was so bad that Apple had to apologize, and even worse, they had to literally tell people to go and use other mapping apps while the situation was being resolved. You would never want to take people off your platform. 9 out of 10 fail. Okay, the final fail is so funny, but it's so bad at the same time. So let me set the story for you. In 2010, an Apple engineer went out to the bar for some drinks, but he had a prototype iPhone 4 in his pocket, and he left this iPhone 4 at the bar. And so there was another guy at the bar who decided to sell this prototype iPhone 4 to Gizmodo, and they covered it on their website and put out a whole story about it. So everyone really knew what the iPhone 4 was before it was even released. 10 out of 10 fail. Not only do you lose the thing, but you manage to sell it to a news agency which covers tech, and they can cover it so that everyone can know before the phone's launch. I hope you enjoyed all of these Apple fails. If you'd like to see something like this again, comment down below and tell me, because I'd like to hear your feedback. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.